This video is packed with everything you need to know about the differences between becoming an engineer and becoming a doctor. It includes everything from salaries, work hours, working abroad, to how hard it is to get into the program, how much your grades impact, and so much more. All your questions will be answered. I'm doing this video together with Skye Nicodel, who is in the end of his studies of becoming a doctor. He also has a YouTube channel about studying to become a doctor, productivity tips, and general work and studying tips. We made a video on his channel too, where we talk about what it's like to be a management consultant. So go and check that out right after you've watched this video. The two of us are both Swedish, so this is a bit biased towards Sweden, but we tried to keep it as general and universal as we just possibly could, so that everyone could feel included and find something that relates to them, no matter what country you live in. I have divided this video into 3 parts, which is before uni, during uni, and after uni / when you're working. And I marked chapters down in the timeline, so feel free to skip around to whatever questions you think is the most interesting. Okay, so enough talking, let's get into the video.
Okay, so hi Skye, welcome to my channel. It's really nice to have you here.
Really nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
I was thinking that we should start introducing ourselves a bit, since we have a bit of different background, which is all this video is about. So please tell me where you're from, what did you study at high school, and what are you doing now?
Okay, so I'm from Stockholm. I'm 24 years old, and in high school I studied natural sciences, but actually it was a special variant. So it was natural sciences, but also social sciences mixed into one. So it wasn't quite natural science, and it wasn't quite social science. Basically a mix of those. Yeah, and was there one more question?
Yeah, so what and where did you study at uni?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so and then because of this weird like high school variant that I did, because if I would have chosen regular natural science, then I would have been able to get into med school in Sweden, but I couldn't get into med school directly, and instead I went to Latvia, to Riga, where you can study medicine and you don't need as high grades as in Sweden. So I started there and I studied for 2 years, and then via another special variant, I could come from Latvia to a Swedish university. So basically bypassing the regular system. It's totally legal, but it's a bit weird.
Yeah, I know. I've heard that you can do that with becoming a dentist too. Like,
yeah.
The other
so
way
basically
around.
That you start doing maybe 2 years in another country, and then they see that, okay, he's able to do this. Now he can come back to Sweden.
Yeah. And right now you're still studying to become a doctor.
Yeah, so I'm doing my 8th semester now, so it's 1.5 years left of my studies.
Cool. Okay, I'll do some short introduction about myself also for everyone who's new watching this. So I'm Emelie, I'm 26 years old, and I'm from a very small village outside of Falun in Sweden. And there I studied natural sciences during high school, but I did it with a kind of a music twist. So I did natural science and music. And then I moved to Stockholm to start studying to engineering. And I finished school in 2018, and now I work as a management consultant. So that's kind of my short story. So I was thinking, like, before university, was it easy for you to decide on what you wanted to study?
I would say that I had a lot of different things in mind, but I was very influenced by my parents, or particularly my father, who is a doctor. And there is this saying that if you have Persian parents and they are doctors or something, then you you have to become a doctor, basically. So that was, I was never forced to do it, but it was just something always in the back of my head. But I also thought about law school. I was thinking about law school, and also I was thinking about psychology, and I actually applied for psychology and got in. But in the last minute, I chose medicine in Latvia instead. So those were the three big ones.
And why did you end up choosing medicine over the other ones?
Honestly, like today, it's another story. But from the the day when I chose it, it's mostly because of pressures from outside. So I think I was really interested in psychology, and I still think that that would have been also very good for me. But I think that there was such pressure for me, and I didn't really know. Like, I just wanted to please my dad mostly, honestly. But now it has changed a lot. But because I know, and that's kind of what my channel is about also, that like I went into medicine for the wrong reasons, and now I'm trying to, or now I've found the right reasons, kind of.
Yeah, so for me, I was actually thinking between engineering and medicine.
Okay.
And I was kind of going back and forth between them for quite some time. But then in the end, I ended up choosing engineering because I was basically thinking like, okay, so what subjects do I really like the most? So medicine, like my thought at least, is that it's more biology and chemistry, whereas engineering is more physics and mathematics. And looking at it that way, I was like, okay, but I really like physics and mathematics and not so much biology and chemistry. And then I ended up going into engineering.
Did you also think about like the practical part of it? Because a lot of people think about, like if we compare studying engineering or medicine, it's basically kind of, both are very long, degrees, but the difference is that more or less when you're done with engineering, you get into maybe some trainee program, and then and then you like start your career. But in correct me if I'm wrong, but in medicine, it's like it's such a hassle, because first you have to do this like work as junior doctor, and then you do internship, and then you do like the next thing and the next thing, and it's like a stair of things that you have to do before you become a real doctor.
Yeah, no, I never really thought so far, I guess. It was more about it for me, like what would I need to do at that type of work? So like, am I really interested in the human body, or like engineering for me before I started studying engineering was like, or do I want to build bridges? And I was like, well, building bridges seems fun. And then I realized it wasn't kind of like that, but that's kind of what I was thinking. So I wasn't really into that, like the long way for medicine or anything like that. I didn't think so far. It was more like, okay, I'll just do this and try it out and see how it goes.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll just add this because so that people don't get the wrong idea. So I chose medicine for the wrong reasons, but now, for example, now why I love like medicine and why I'm doing it, it's because I feel like it's a very meaningful job for me. Like I realize with time that most jobs are meaningful in different ways, but medicine in a way is one of the most concrete and direct meaningful ways. For me, it's like, okay, there's a person who's really ill and I can help the person. While as for example, like a management consultant, I'm thinking like, okay, you do structural changes up here which affect thousands of people down here, but it's not as direct.
No, it's not. That's true.
And that's basically the reason why I'm still in medicine.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but medicine is it's one of the hardest programs to get into, right? Or the hardest program.
Like I would say right now it's the hardest.
Yeah, like both engineering and medicine is hard, but medicine is probably the hardest, except for maybe one lonely program that everyone wants to go.
Yeah, exactly. But also I think engineering is hard, but the benefit is that there are a lot of places where you can read engineering. But medicine, it's very central. It's like we have these 5 like medical universities, and this is the way to get in.
For medicine, does it matter like what school you choose? Does it have an impact on like what job you get, or like how hard it is to get in, or?
I would say generally no, or yeah, it's different in how hard it is to get in. So Karolinska Institute is one of the biggest and like most one of the best medical universities actually in the world, because of its connection to a lot of science stuff. So it has very high academic status, but I wouldn't say that there's a difference in the actual education of the different schools in medical schools in Sweden. But it's harder to get into Karolinska because it's basically the best one in the traditional sense. But I would say then when you are trying to get a job later, it doesn't matter. Like within Sweden, no one cares because everyone knows that it's the same. It's the same. Like if you have the degree, you're capable.
Okay, because I guess that's quite a difference from engineering then, because engineering is also quite centered around these big schools that have the programs that have been there for like 50 or 100 years. And those have quite a high status, and therefore are probably quite a lot harder to get into. And then you have the kind of smaller, newer schools, and those are easier to get into, but you don't have the same status when you finish studying there either. So like employers pretty much look less on what program you've studied within engineering, because engineering has so many different programs, but they look more kind of at what schools you've studied at. Because at the school that I went to, which is KTH, there's quite a difference in the scores or the grades that you need to get into the school between the different programs. Like I think the chemistry program had the lowest when I started, and then industrial engineering had the highest, and the difference between the two were actually quite big. But in the end, what program you choose obviously affects, like to a large extent, what type of job you get into. If you study chemistry, you probably want to have a job within that area, whereas with industrial engineering, you probably want a job within that area. But there's nothing that like keeps you from mixing that either. You can study chemistry and get a management job, or you can study management and get a chemistry job. Like the line is not that thick, but there is quite a difference in what school you choose to study at and what type of job you get later.
But is it like if there's a really, like, I don't know how to say it, but like a really competent, good person who's good with people and manages good on the interviews, but they are coming from a so-called like less good school, do they not get the job?
I would say they probably still do, but they would have to work like a lot harder on their application and kind of outshine the other ones.
Okay,
that's quite a difference.
Because just to sum it up, like everything is very streamlined. It's like, okay, you have the medical degree, now you have to do this, and as long as you are just doing your job, you will get the job basically. Whereas engineering is kind of like it's the same reason as why you choose the natural science program. It's like you can get in everywhere, and then it's like you've done engineering and you can get whatever job you want. So it's like it's an open world, but it does matter. So in medicine, I guess you study like a lot of biology, chemistry, autonomy and stuff. Like what courses and stuff do you do in med school? So the first 2 years it's a bit different in different places, but basically med school is 5.5 years in Sweden. Soon it will be 6 years. So the beginning of the first third of the program, then it's called the preclinical studies, and then you study cell biology, like anatomy, biochemistry. It's basically like the ground stones of the human body. So what are we made of? How do the cellular processes work? And also with anatomy, it gets a bit to the next level. So okay, with all these cells and everything, now we have a body. What is the body? And later we read physiology, which is the science of the working human body, basically. And then we read pathology, which is like what happens when the human body gets ill. So it's very interesting, actually, now that I think back. You read, it's really like from the ground up. So from cellular level to human being to sick human being. So let's say in the first year, we read about this cell. And in the second year, we read like, okay, so now we have someone who stabbed this cell. So what happened? So it's really interesting in that way. And then for the rest of the, like, let's say the rest of the 2 of the thirds, it's more about clinical placements and clinical practice. Okay, now we have the education that we need to get to see patients. And then we see all of these things that we read for 2 years, but we see them in actual people. And then you can go, for every disease in every different area, we go through different like things. For example, all right, diagnosis. How do we diagnose this thing? How do we treat this thing? How do we follow up this thing? And then we move on to the next disease. How do we diagnose this thing? How do we? So it's very like systematic way of basically registering all the diseases in our head. But it's not like everyone knows this after all of these years. It's basically, you just have to know it, and you have to learn how to learn. And that's the thing that you're doing also in engineering. And then when you're done, when you become a doctor, that's when you start actually learning like real stuff that you will use.
I get that.
So basically, preclinical studies where you don't see patients, and clinical studies where you see patients and apply stuff to them.
So how much of the education is like actually being out there meeting patients?
It's very different in different city, like in different universities, and also in different countries. So in Latvia, I've heard from my friends that are still there, it's basically not so much that they see patients. It's maybe they see patients, but they don't actually interact with them so often. But in Sweden, already from like the first or second semester, we start seeing patients, and we don't like examine them and do all of the things that the doctors do, but we talk to them, and we do some simple tasks just to get to know the patient-doctor relationship. And then later, I would say in Linköping, where I study, it's a lot of contact with patients from year 3. So Monday to Thursday, we have clinical placement, and then you're basically working as a junior assistant doctor. So you're always behind someone, but you get to like check the heart and the heartbeat and talk to the patient, take the patient history. And we basically do this in different wards and in different specialities for 3 years. So to get the full spectrum.
So you move around like every ward.
Yeah, basically. And that's honestly the most challenging part for me, I would say, in med school, that you never know anything and you're always new, and no one actually, and it's a very hierarchical structure in the hospital and in medicine in general. So basically the specialists or the head doctors, they really don't care about the students. And so you're there basically for 2 weeks, and sometimes no one even talks to you, basically, in the worst case scenario.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think it builds character, but I would say that it's also very challenging.
Yeah, I guess that's like so different from engineering, because in engineering you don't have any like practical experience at all. Like the whole program is basically theoretical, with like, of course, a few study visits to places, and like you get company visits and stuff, but you're never like out there practicing to be an engineer unless you do internships or stuff on your free time or during the summers and so.
But
Like,
doesn't that also, isn't that because it's kind of undefined? Like, as you say, you can do basically anything. So let's say you did some internship, but you want to become a management consultant, but you're doing some completely different thing.
Yeah,
that's a challenge.
Yeah, it is. So yeah, because it's not really defined what an engineer works with, and it's so different between the programs and between people's interests. Like I studied energy and environment engineering. So basically I had like 1/3 of my courses, which I guess is like general for all engineering students, is basic physics and maths and some like chemistry and stuff, like all the basics. And then 1/3 for me was energy and environment courses. So that's quite a long time of studies, like around my specialty.
Yeah.
And then I'm also very interested in management. So I focus my education around management. So like 1/3 of my courses were around that. But I guess some of my classmates did maybe like 2/3 of their studies within energy and environment. So it can be quite different on what your interests are and what you're planning on working with later. Because I never really planned on working like in depth with sustainability questions or like environment questions in that way. I've always been more interested in like economy and how companies work and how they are run and how they are organized. So I guess that would have been hard if we were like forced to have internships or things during our studies, because people's interests and the reason why you get into engineering is so different. It's so very wide compared to medicine or what you're going to do afterwards.
Yeah, exactly.
But how does it work in medical school with the grades? What kind of grading system do you have, and does it matter then afterwards, like what kind of job you get and so on?
In Sweden, I would say no. So in Sweden, we don't have grades. We just have pass or fail. And what I've heard is that it's a very conscious decision because we, like as doctors, it's this thing that we have to help sick people, and we are a group that we work together. And if we would have like competition between doctors, it would be kind of not that good. And I think that that's good. It's a very Swedish and nice way of thinking. Because I would say like in the US, for example, they are basically, from what I've heard, they're fighting to get into the nice residencies like plastic surgery or something. They have to outplay their colleagues. In Sweden, there are no grades and no one cares about the grades. It's like basically when you get into med school, you're done.
Okay. Because in engineering, it's like we have grades from, or it differs a bit between schools, but my school had grades from A to F, where F was a fail and A was the best.
Yeah.
And most of the courses were graded that way. We also had some pass and fail courses, but like overall. And grades matter if you want to get into like the top hardest jobs. So those are the ones that, which is like trainee jobs and management consulting and maybe like investment banking and other types of like really hard to get into jobs. They in general look at what grades you have. But the thing is, like, it's not that they only choose the people with the best grades. It's probably like they set a minimum limit, and like the ones that are above are like eligible to apply.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, no one really knows what that limit is.
Yeah.
But in general, to get a like average engineering job, they most likely don't look at the grades. So it depends a bit on what your ambitions are and what job you want to have. So, because in engineering, depending on what type of job you want to have. Like grades do matter for some types of jobs, but a thing that probably matters more is if you've had international experience, or if you've done some type of extracurricular activities, like having an internship or running a project within the student union and stuff like that. That can really impact what type of job you get. And those are the type of skills that they're looking for in a lot of engineering positions, like leadership experience and like proving that you can do things for yourself. How is that in medicine? Like, do you have any such kind of pressure at all, or is it just like based on completing your studies?
I would say that there's no such pressure, but it's always it's rewarding to have done some research. Like some people, they do like research projects during med school. Maybe some people also like do the full thing and get like almost like get their PhD during their med school, and that's very good when they want to apply for internships. And when I say internships in medicine in Sweden, it means återtjänstgöring. So you have to do a 2-year internship in order to get your certificate, like that you are a doctor. And there's like, so let's say I'm just a regular medical student, and now I'm done, and now I'm applying to do my internship, which I have to do. And I'm competing with a person who has done some research and has like a degree in research, like PhD or something. Then they will basically always get ahead. So because it's a very academic field, so academic things are very like highly regarded. But for example, for me, like I do my YouTube channel, and I've worked in IT. I took a study break and I worked in IT. I am always doing different projects, like in I've done a lot of things during my studies, but I would say that won't help me in my career, like at least not in the beginning, which is kind of sad. So to get your first jobs, no one cares. Like it's just, okay, did you do med school? Fine. All right, let's go to the next step. But later, let's say I want to start a company within medical technology or something, then of course this will be really good, the things that I've done during med school. But for the regular path of a regular doctor, no one cares about internships or international experience.
Okay, so that's very different then, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe we should move into like during the job or applying for jobs, because like you said, moving into the medical field and becoming a doctor, the way is pretty straight on what you should be doing, right?
Yeah.
Are you guaranteed to get a job after medical school?
I would say yes, basically 100%. Yes. And you don't even have to be good. Like you have to study and complete your education. But since there's such high demand for doctors, and since there's it's a very concrete job, like you know exactly what a doctor is, then it's really, I would say the only people that don't get a job, it's that either that they don't know the language or the culture, like they don't match with the interviewees, like it has to be really bad, like that they really don't connect in any way. Okay. And then you have some other problems probably in your life also. But like a normal person who speaks Swedish and has completed their education, they will get a job, definitely.
Then I guess like you're pretty much guaranteed a job, but it can take some time, because like you don't have that much options in medicine. So if you don't get a job as a doctor, you're pretty much but you're basically pretty much screwed. Yeah,
that's really interesting that you bring it up, because for me, and I'm also talking about this on my YouTube channel, I'm a lot for exploring different alternatives. And I would say that it's a new thing. Like before, no one thought like this. Let's say 10 years ago, it's like, I'm going to be a doctor and I'm going to work at a hospital and I'm going to do doctor stuff. But I would say that there is a movement now, which I would say I'm part of, that it's I'm not sure, honestly, if I want to be a clinical doctor. So I'm gonna complete my education, but then I might, for example, jump into management consulting. There are a lot of health management companies that are looking for doctors who, after some time, like, of course, if I'm a doctor and I start management consulting, I have a lot of stuff to learn about leadership and organization and economy. But I also have a real big competence about the health sector and how it works. So that's one thing that you could do, which I'm thinking about. Another thing is just starting your own clinic or company. So, for example, right now I'm involved with a company, like a private psychiatry practice, who is trying a new concept, basically, which I can't go into it in detail, but I'm just saying that there are a lot of companies within medicine that do cool stuff that are not in the hospital. Or, for example, there's now a headband or something that you can put if you have depression, and it sends like waves into your brain, and it has a similar effect to taking like antidepressants. And those are kind of things that I would be interested in trying also, because I don't think that there is something crazy fun going on in the hospital that I can't find anywhere else, you know. But I think I will probably work as a regular doctor for a period. But I also see myself going out from that.
So to summarize, like, basically most people go into medicine to actually become a doctor and stay within the hospital, basically. But there are opportunities to do other things regarding like medicine and technology within medicine that can also be really exciting and interesting to explore. Even if you're tired, like at that hospital environment, you're not stuck at being a doctor forever. But
I would say that this is a very new thing, and that there's not a lot of people. I would say maybe it feels like it's maybe 15% of all students or doctors right now that are doing something different.
Yeah. Okay. So in engineering, you're not guaranteed to have a job, because everything depends on your own ambitions and what type of job you want. But in general, like, it's one of the programs and studies that you're most guaranteed to get a job, because there's such a high need on the market for engineers. So you'll probably get a job. The question is whether you get the job that you really want or not.
But what are actually the entry jobs? Like, I have a lot of friends that are in similar, like as you, that they did industrial engineering, for example, and they become management consultants. And that one is kind of clear to me. But what are other jobs, like entry-level jobs that are not in consulting?
Yeah, but the thing is, I think, like, from my school, I guess like 70% of all the students go into consulting, or some type of consulting, because it really is a very good entry-level job. But within their own different fields. So, like, a lot of my classmates went to companies that are more directed towards basically like energy and environment consulting. So not so much management consulting, but more regarding like pure environmental questions. So a lot of people become consultants for the first part of their career, but like other types of jobs are probably like some kind of business developer, or some kind of, I guess, some type of like expert. It all depends on what you studied, because if you're more into like product development, because that's an engineering program at my school, you could probably get like a product development entry-level job. So yeah. And in industrial engineering, which is more type of management focused, you could probably get a job within a strategy department or business development department, but all on the entry level position, and not on the kind of like, you're not a strategy expert, but you're someone who does not all the dirty work, but all of the more easy type of work. Yeah. And then in general, I also think that a lot of engineers go into some type of project management roles. Yeah. In different ways. And I guess like that's a lot of the things that management consultants do too. It's a lot of project management, and you can do that at any regular company too. Yeah. So yeah,
it's a very wide range of things, but it seems like most people go into consulting. And I guess that consulting also is a way of finding where you want to be. For example, after 5 or 6 years, maybe you get headhunted by one of your customers.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, a lot of people go to the clients after having a consultancy job. Yeah. But it's also like consulting is such a good way to explore like a lot of different subjects and a lot of different areas, and you can really find what you're interested in, because as I said, engineering studies are so broad and it's so theoretical that you don't really know what it's like working within it. So I guess that's why consulting is such a natural way to go with it, because that's another way to try out a lot of different things, but it makes it possible for you to actually try it out and work with it, and then choose what you really want to do. Yeah. And what about like salaries within medicine and engineering?
So in medicine, it's very clear, like with all of the other parts of medicine, it's that when you're a junior, so when you are done with your medical studies, you can be a junior doctor, which doesn't have a responsibility and does junior stuff. And then you have, I'll talk in Swedish crowns. So it's 30,000 Swedish crowns. It's basically, that's the entry level that you get into. So I would say honestly that it starts really low because like compared to what you have actually studied. So that's where it starts. And then, so for about 2 years, you have around 30,000 crowns salary. But then when you get into your specialty or residency, it's a 5-year program where you're actually working as a doctor, you're a competent doctor, you're like everything is fine, but you're not a specialist in any field. And during this period, you can have between like 47,000 to 55,000 Swedish crowns in salary, and you have it for 5 years. And then when you become a specialist, then it's basically the cap is removed, and then like everything is possible. But I would say you would have around 70 to 80,000 crowns. But I want to say some things about this. So when I say 30,000 when you're doing entry level work, it's not actually 30,000, because as a doctor, you're doing it's shift work. So sometimes you're working during the nights and the weekends. So even though it says 30,000 on my contract, usually it would be more around 45,000, because you're doing a lot of dirty work. No, but you're doing work on the weekends and evenings and everything. And then also another big thing is which specialty you choose. For example, psychiatry and general medicine, allmän medicin, they have right now the highest salaries because there is a big need for them. So let's say if you're a specialist in orthopedics, then you maybe have 70, 80,000. But if you're a specialist in psychiatry, you might have 100,000 because it's really needed. And the last thing is that it's a big difference between the private sector and in Swedish, the offentlig sector.
The public
sector. So the public sector. So basically, if you're at a regular hospital, you have lower salary than if you would go into the private sector. Like, let's say you do a private psychiatry practice or private gynecology. I've heard like from an anonymous source that you could get maybe like 130,000 salary if you're working as a private gynecologist, while in the hospital it's maybe 70,000-80,000.
Okay. So for engineering, like the entry salary is quite different. Like when I finished school, I had friends with salaries ranging from like 27,000 up to 50,000 Swedish crowns. So it's a huge difference, but I would say like most people were in the lower end of that spectrum. Like 50,000 is basically like the really hard work all day around management consultancy companies.
Like BCG and McKinsey, basically.
Yeah. They are around that those numbers. And then I would say like I don't know the average salaries like for the main period of time, but I would say in general engineering is probably lower than medicine on average, but I would say there's no cap for engineering with people with engineering background, because a lot of managers and CEOs have engineering or business backgrounds.
Yeah.
And like if you're a CEO for a really large company, you can have insane amounts of money.
Yeah.
So I would say like engineering, it probably varies more than in medicine, and the average is probably lower than in medicine, but if depending on what your interests are and how much you work, you can have like a huge salary.
Yeah, and it feels like you can you can do some great career choices as a engineer. Like if you're an engineer and you studied right after high school and you're done when you're like 24, 25, and even if you have like 30,000 as your starting salary, within just a few years you can raise it by a lot, if I'm not mistaken. While in medicine you're kind of stuck in this system. So basically you have to go through all of the stages before you become a specialist, and that's when the real money comes.
Yeah, in engineering you're more open to like the large salary increases often happen when you switch jobs. So if you change job, you can probably bump up your salary quite a lot.
Yeah, okay.
So everything depends on how long you are at one place and what type of role and position you have. Because if you move quickly into some kind of management role, like you're becoming a boss of a department or something like that, you can get quite a high salary quite fast.
Yeah.
But on average, like it's probably lower. I guess the work hours differ a lot between medicine and engineering too, because engineering is probably it's like a 9 to 5 in general, and then you can have those type of positions where you work like a lot, you like up to 80 hours a week or something. But in medicine, you probably do you have like standard work hours, but you could do it all over the day instead?
It really depends on your position and your speciality, I would say. So basically, if you choose general medicine, for example, which is just family doctor, then you're working regular 9 to 5, basically. So you start at 8 and you go home at 4. So that's that, and then you can leave your work. I mean, of course, you can't leave the emotional baggage of meeting some person with depression or cancer or whatever. But it's really that you go there, you log into the system, you have your patients, and then you go home. While in some other, like if you're a surgeon or if you are a anesthesiologist, which is the people that basically in the operating room, they are in charge of the patient. And the survival of the patient. And these specialities, it's like you have to get in now, or you like it's in the night or in the evenings or in the mornings and in the weekends. So it depends on the specialty, but also on the level. So first you're a junior doctor, then you're a regular doctor, and then you're a specialist, and then you're like a senior doctor. Like in Britain, it's called a consultant. It's överläkare. That's like the highest position. And the överläkare, it's like, or the consultants, they have done their bulk of their job. So basically they are just advisors. So I mean, I'm kind of exaggerating maybe, but basically they just have to be there and make sure that everything flows, but they don't do as much stuff as the junior doctors. So actually the people that are actually doing the bulk of the heavy work, it's the regular doctors and the junior doctors. And the consultants, they are more like overseers of the process.
Okay. Yeah.
And of course, then they can decide more like, yeah, I want to stay. For example, he or she can say, yeah, I don't want to work on Christmas Day, for example. But the junior doctor doesn't have that opportunity.
Okay. It differs a lot between positions and what type of work you do.
Yeah.
Working abroad. Can you work abroad as a doctor? Does the certificate, is it valid for other countries?
Yes. So in Europe, it's completely standardized. So as a Swedish doctor, you can work anywhere in Europe. You just have to, I think that in most countries, you have to do a language test.
Okay.
But it's the same certificate. And also there are some countries in Asia and also I think it's either Australia or New Zealand, one of them, I think you can work there without doing some extra thing. While if you want to work in the US, then it's really hard. Then you have to do a special, typical US that you have to do like special tests and stuff to get into there. So I would say it's possible, but it's really hard. And also in large parts of Africa, you can work either as a real work that you move, let's say, to, I don't know, like Kenya or Gambia or somewhere, but also you can do work with these Médecins Sans Frontières, like the people that do voluntary work in different countries. So yes, it's very international.
Yeah, engineering is the same. Like it's super easy to, I wouldn't say super easy to get a job abroad. Like you have to work for it, obviously, but it's one of those jobs where you can quite easily, like if you work at a global company, you can quite easily get a transfer to another country, or like in some different kind of positions, you actually also kind of work abroad. Like a lot of management consultancy companies have global staffing. So there you're actually forced to work abroad where you're positioned. So like the opportunities to work abroad is very, very large within engineering. So I guess like the opportunities are good for both these jobs.
Yeah.
I guess that was it. Thank you, Sky, for joining me. Do you want to give a little promotion about your channel?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you for having me. And it was really nice. And I think these are questions that a lot of people are thinking about.
I sure was.
So, so my YouTube channel is just my name. So Sky Nicodel, maybe you have a link or something on the video. And so right now I'm a medical student, but I'm doing a lot of other stuff also, working with different random stuff and bringing you on the journey and talking about how life as a student can be and some tips and tricks about life stuff in general. So check it out. It's in Swedish right now, but I'm starting to do more videos in English. So definitely check it out and subscribe if you like it.
Perfect. So that was it. And thank you for being here.
Thanks.
Congratulations for making it to the end. If you watched the video all the way through, give it a like and comment down below. Now I know which one's the best. Make sure to check out Sky's channel and the video we did together on his channel. And I'll see you over there.